Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah. So welcome to everyone, and Ivan's just going to start now.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to this webinar that's titled Lost Childhood in Palestine, the Impact of War Crimes and Genocide on Children. Thank you for taking the time from your day to join us. I want to, first of all, acknowledge any children and youth who might be with us on this call, these young minds who joined us because they recognize that they have a responsibility towards the children of Palestine are indeed our hope for a better future and a more just world. My name is Ayman Ouida. I'm a professor of medicine who's originally from Gaza. I'm based in Canada in a city called Sherbrooke. Today's event is part of the International Week of Action for Resisting Genocide and Boycotting for Palestinian Liberation. The week's events, including this one, were sponsored by the Canadian BDS, or Boycott, Divest, Sanction Coalition, and its international allies, and was endorsed by over 100 organizations across the world, including our own local group here, Solidarity Sherbrooke Palestine, as well as Just Peace Advocates, who have worked on this event along with other members of the coalition. Some housekeeping things before we start. This webinar is being recorded. It is also live streamed to Just Peace Advocates YouTube channel. The link will be put in the chat box and you can share it with friends and family. It will also be sent to all who are registered with us today, as well as made available on social media and through e-blasts following the event. You can put your questions in the question part of the chat. We may open the chat box depending on the number of questions that we get and if we have time for engaging with you, the audience. And for those in Canada, I'd like to highlight something important. While you're on this call, if you could please visit the link that will be put in the chat box that will allow you to send a letter to your local MP. The letter is already written. You can edit it if you wish, and it will call upon them to denounce and condemn Israel's treatment of children. It'll take you under a minute to do that, so please do it. Today's webinar is focused on the devastating effects of the ongoing genocide on children in Gaza and the use of military law in the West Bank to detain minors, including children. We have experts with us who will explore the harsh realities faced by Palestinian children, including the destruction of homes, schools, and essential infrastructure in Gaza, as well as the psychological and physical toll of military occupation. It will also include a discussion on the use of military law to detain and imprison children in the West Bank, shedding light on the violations of their basic human rights. So this will include not just Gaza, but it will also include the treatment of children in the West Bank. We're pleased to have with us today Lubna Nadvi, who is a senior lecturer, Dr. Yasser Khan, who's a Canadian ophthalmologist and plastic surgeon, and Ayad Abu Eqtaish, Accountability Manager for Defense for Children International Palestine. I will introduce them in more detail as we get to each of their segments. And with that, and before handing it over to our first speaker, I'd like to spend a few minutes to tell you about one child who is special to me as someone who is originally from Gaza and has a lot of relatives there. So I'm going to share my screen and maybe show you some of the experiences that she has been going through in the last year or so. So Naima, who you see here, is 8 years old. She lived in Shijaiya, a neighborhood in Gaza before the war, and was like any child, happy, had her own room, had her dolls, had her environment. And now she became displaced in the south of Gaza, where she was in a school for the most part, had to learn how to support her family by picking up wigs for sticks for burning fire in order to cook. So there was no stove in these schools.
No.
And it was quite crowded. So here's Naima. After 4 months, they were able to have their first chicken, something they used to have every week. And in a crowded room is where she lived, along with her 20 other cousins, 4 uncles, and grandmother who is sitting there, who would be my aunt. This is Naima preparing the food. At some point, they were able to organize some beautiful activities for the children in order to distract them from the harsh realities of war. Eventually, a lot of the bombings would come to the south of Gaza, where eventually they would have to be displaced. And at some point, she needed dental care, which was very difficult to get. So about 2 months after being in pain, she was finally able to go to a clinic. And like I said, eventually they would have to be displaced even from that school. So the bombings reached the school. They were ordered to evacuate. You can see on the left how they are evacuating their goods. So they were settled at home, then they settled in a school, and now they're being displaced from that school into a tent in the middle of nowhere, really. That was a very difficult reality for her to comprehend, to understand, and to see what is happening on the ground over there. This is her after 2 months of having also her slippers ripped. She was so happy that she had slippers. There was no slippers into Gaza. There was actually a crisis of slippers where children and people had to walk barefoot. This is her with her brother. She sent me a nice video just thanking us for supporting them. And yeah, this is Naima for you. One example of the many, many thousands who are there. She's from, like I said, the northern part of Gaza, had to be displaced. She dreams of becoming a doctor, but if you call her today and ask her, what is your one wish? It's to go back home. It's to go back to her room. It's to go back to the safety that she had prior to the war. So with that, I'd like to go back to our speakers. And we have for our first speaker, Dr. Lubna Nadvi, who, as I mentioned, is a senior lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Dr. Nadvi obtained her PhD from the same university in 2009. Her research interests are in political science, Middle Eastern politics, international relations, and peace studies. She's also an activist who has been involved in the Palestinian cause since the 1990s and has been to the West Bank many times in the past. She's also the co-founder of the South African Palestine Solidarity Movement. And with that, I'll pass it to Lubna, and I'll mention, like I said, that questions should be posted in the questions box, and we'll take them up as we get closer to the end. Lubna, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon and good evening as well from South Africa. Thank you very much to the organizers of this webinar for the invitation to join you and to share some thoughts and experiences. And as I'm based in South Africa, I send greetings and solidarity from here in Durban to all of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And as you know, South Africans are very much in solidarity with the people of Palestine. So I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation, and if you'll just give me a moment, I'd just like to transition to that. So if you can see that, hopefully that's coming through clearly. I'd like to just begin by giving some context in terms of what I'd like to speak to. As this webinar focuses on the issue of war crimes and genocide, I want to make the argument that actually Israel has been committing war crimes really since 1948, and to speak to that from the sort of outset of the occupation, and then come to looking at the genocide in Gaza at the moment. So I want to start off by talking about the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The United Nations has a framework for human rights for children, and it is called the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And it has all of these amazing articles and rights, and starting from the definition of a child, someone who is younger, 18 years and younger, or younger than 18. And of course, all of the other things which sort of speak to the fact that children should, their best interest should always be taken into consideration. They should have family guidance. They should have the right to stay with their families, be protected from kidnapping. Their views should be taken into account, and so on. So it's a very comprehensive document, and you would think that it would actually be something that would be implemented. But of course, we know that the children of Palestine in the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, they are the ones who are not having the benefit of this convention. And it is absolutely unbelievable that that is the case. So from 1948, you see that children are actually faced with having to deal with war crimes and having all of their rights that they are entitled to denied to them. I want to come to specifically, these rights that speak to the issue of how it is that, they need to be protected in terms of they should be protected by their governments and ensure that their parents and others can look after them. That's 19. 22, the rights of refugee children, children who move from their home country to another refugee or another country as refugees, not safe for them to stay. They should get help and protection and have the same rights as children born in that country. They're entitled to health, water, food, environment. Children have the right to the best healthcare possible, clean water to drink, healthy food, and a clean and safe environment to live in. All adults and children should have information about how to stay safe and healthy. And of course, number 38, they should be protected under situations of war. Children have the right to be protected during war. No child under 15 can join the army or take part in war. So these are all very clearly demarcated in terms of the legal rights that children have. But of course, we know that that is not the case in the case of Palestinian children. I want to just reflect on something that I think many people would be aware of. Many people have made comparisons between the situation in South Africa during apartheid South Africa and what is going on in Palestine at the moment, and the fact that Israel is imposing apartheid on the Palestinian territories. And this image is a very famous image on the left-hand side of the screen of the Soweto uprising, or the situation which emerged on the 16th of June, 1976, when you had children in Soweto who organized to protest against, language rights that were being violated, and basically having to study under apartheid conditions. And the picture shows a young man, Hector Peterson, who has been shot and, of course, is being carried by a fellow student. And this image made the headlines around the world. It is an image of apartheid South Africa and a child that is shot in that situation. On the right-hand side, you see another image of a child that has also been shot in the refugee camp in Rafah in 2004 in the Gaza Strip. And you see that this image is obviously very similar to that of apartheid South Africa. And so clearly children are being shot at, they're being killed, which is not a situation that any child should have to deal with. So where does that take us? We need to now understand that effectively we find ourselves in a situation where we are dealing with a range of challenges. And I'm just going to try and, I'm sorry if you're not able to see my slides there. Are you able to see them? I'm not quite sure what's happened here. Yes, so I'm trying. Oh, there we go. So one of the things that we find happening is that children are being forced to become freedom fighters. And instead of playing on playgrounds, they're being forced to become freedom fighters in a context that, you know, they should be children. They should be allowed to be children. And this is a very famous image of Faris Ode in 2000, who was a young boy. This image became quite popular because it, of course, went around the world and it became a symbol of resistance against occupation. Effectively, this young boy went and stood in front of this tank, and he was also unfortunately killed a few days after this picture was taken. So he was killed on the 8th of November 2000. So I'm going back 24 years because the situation that Palestinian children have been facing, as I said, is war crimes that have been that they have been subject to since 1948. It brings children in front of tanks, in front of you know, things that they should not have to be dealing with, and children that have basic way that a child can actually work, free fight up stones, and they've had to actually defend themselves against occupation. Go up to become resistant for young boy in Gaza, who obviously mass resistance movement, and he basically is you know, a child that should actually have he's shown with a gun, and this is the reality of the children. They have to resist against their occupation or what to every day. This is a boy who is just playing on the streets. This is in the West Bank, and effectively who are
Seems we lost Lubna. Karen, maybe you're gonna be able to get her back on.
She will, hi, yeah, I expect she will come back on South Africa on Eqtaish and seems to have brownouts where this happens. So Yasser has joined us, so maybe we could move to Yasser and then pick up with Lubna again, and I will follow up with her if I don't see her back online in a moment. Sorry about this, folks.
No problem. Thank you, Karen. And I apologize once again for this technical difficulty. It's really nice to have you, Dr. Yasser Khan, with us today. Dr. Khan is a Canadian ophthalmologist and plastic surgeon who has served in Gaza. He's from the Greater Toronto area in Canada, where he lives and works. Dr. Khan has been to over 45 different countries on a humanitarian basis, where he taught surgery, performed surgery, and established educational programs. He spent 10 days at the European Hospital in Gaza performing eye surgeries on victims of Israeli attacks. It was his second medical mission recently to Gaza since the genocide began last October. Dr. Khan? You're on mute.
Good. Assalamu alaikum. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me on and for organizing this. I was I actually went on, I think what's probably the first North American mission to Gaza in December, January. And then I went again in March. I went with a surgical team. So, you know, at least on the ground experiences, all stem from like March, and everything I say and I experience is much worse now. I mean, the healthcare facilities had collapsed completely back then, And they've even, even worse now, with the hospitals even less operational now. I mean, there's technically speaking, only maybe 3 out of 36 hospitals that are really functioning in any shape or form, out of 36. And I think I'll start off by saying, and I think those who've been will agree, is that the first thing I was really taken aback when I went to Gaza in December was the amount of children that are there everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And these are mostly elementary school age children. They're everywhere. It's a blessing. I mean, you see them running around despite the conflict at that point. I mean, even in March, they're running around and they're relatively happy because, being children, despite having lost everything. But they're everywhere. So it's logical for anybody who goes there. You don't need any statistics to deduce that if something bad happens, whether it's a famine, a man-made induced famine, a reduction of supplies and medicines and food, is going to affect children. Infectious disease, mostly children. Infectious disease is going to affect mostly children. Deaths and injuries, severe injuries, will affect mostly children. Mental health will affect mostly children. So the list goes on, and that's really clear. The statistic that came up a few months ago, that 70% of the women 70% of the people that have been killed or wounded in this genocide have been women and children, right? And so it makes completely sense, and that's the first thing that I noticed, and that's why this is a big problem. I mean, when I was there, even me personally, from my own personal experience, 95% of the patients that I treated when I was there and that I operated on, and unfortunately, I didn't operate to save anybody. I operated to remove their eyes that were damaged from shrapnel, even bullets. And there's been lots of evidence now by multiple surgeons that the Israeli occupation forces the snipers have been aiming at kneecaps of children, and also with headshot wounds directly, not missing. And there's been ample evidence by multiple surgeons on the ground who've seen this happen, with eyes as well. I can support that. I can support the evidence of what the other surgeons have said now openly, as recent as in a New York Times opinion piece as well. So, anyways, and even kneecaps. I mean, when I was there, they had a number of kneecap injuries and number of amputations. Also, the special, from what was explained to me on the ground, is that the weapons and the drones that are being used, a lot of them have not been used before. So it's almost like an experimental playing field, and they're using these weaponized drones like the Hellfire drone or others that are designed to do maximum damage, if not killing. So basically, even the shrapnel that from these special drones that are designed to release as much shrapnel create as much shrapnel as possible, they cause amputations in children that are unique. They're, most amputations are like above knee, are at the kneecap or the elbow. These are above knee, at the thigh, mid-thigh or mid-arm, which are much more complicated, both from a rehabilitation point of view, and just a repair point of view has been very, very complicated. So, when I was there at that point in time, I was at the European hospital, and again, everything's probably, and I'm not exaggerating, or this is not hyperbole, as this is basically about 100 or 1,000 times worse now than what I witnessed when I was there in March last. There's no beds at the European hospital, which was the last hospital left at that point, and the last fully untouched hospital, I should say, by the IDF. And there's children lying on the floor, no beds, because people have taken the beds to their, for housing, because otherwise they sleep on the floor. And there's no beds. There's sewage leaks everywhere. because because the hospital was not designed to have 25,000 people at the time, and the sewage system was overloaded. And they're in the emergency department, there's sewage leaks everywhere. Sewage, which means feces, which means bacteria, which means disease, right? And there's children running around. Many of these kids don't have shoes. So that's the other issue. So again, like I said, it's all children because that's all you see. So they're the ones who are the biggest victims out of this entire genocide. They're walking around without shoes. A lot of foot infections that get systemic, and then dealing with systemic infections with a lack of antibiotics and resources. Wounds are being sutured on the floor that has just been cleaned with I don't know what, after a sewage leak. So I think overall, I mean, it's been, I mean, the healthcare burden has been tremendous, and the amount of amputations now, I mean, all the numbers, it's hard to come up with numbers. Even as you know, the 42,000 dead number is just the ones that have been identified at the hospitals by the Ministry of Health in Gaza, right? So multiple publications, including the Lancet, have said that at least 186 to 200,000 people are dead alone. That's about 10% of the population. And I can definitely support that number by what I saw. And with 70% of them being children and women, and I'd say 50% being children, or a huge number being children, it's a huge number. And I mean, there's about over 25, again, I said over because nobody knows what the exact number is. I think once this is all over, everything's going to come out of just how bad this genocide has been, how destructive and catastrophic it's been. But over 25,000 are orphaned children, and about 999 or 990 minimum families have been erased from the map, right? But why I say that is a lot of these 25,000 orphans have nobody. So there's no sibling, there's no aunt or uncle or anybody like that. There's actually nobody, and so many of them are completely orphaned with not knowing anybody. So that's a big issue of many of these over 25,000 orphans, because Palestinians lived close together. Families did in the same apartment building or close together. So when the Israelis carpet bombed or dropped these 2,000-pound MK-84 bombs, they killed everybody, right? And so that's one thing. So that's a big issue. So why that's important is, again, a lot of these kids have also now gone out to Qatar, Egypt, maybe Jordan, Turkey, right? Without any guardian to give consent. So why that's important is that many of these kids are being treated without proper consent. Who's consenting the treatment of these kids, right? And the Palestinian ministry that takes care of this in Gaza is non-existent right now. And, so there's no centralized body keeping track of these kids who've gone off everywhere. So that's an issue, big issue. There's more than 20,000 children missing. And these are not children that, what we say by missing is that they're just gone. They're either under the rubble, either dead, completely disintegrated with the force of the bombs, or just missing. I mean, who knows what? Over 5,000 children are amputated, the highest number ever. And 5,000 is a low number. It has to be close to 10,000, but 5,000 is what I've seen as a number of, and this is a few months ago, right? It's a number that I've seen. I believe it was UNICEF is my source, but it's definitely more than that, 100%. The amount of amputations in children has never before been seen in modern warfare, or in even modern times. So so the amount of it takes about, just to give you an idea, it takes about, in North America, if a child is amputated in a normal way with proper surgery, proper technique, it takes about, including eyes, I took about, at least overall, I had about 25 eyes I took out, one or two eyes, either, running them blind or at least one eye gone, and they'll need some rehab for that socket that I left empty, if they're still alive, the patients I treated. But anyway, so coming back to a limb, it takes about 9 months of multiple procedures, or actually months of procedures, at least 8 or 9 procedures per stump on average to rehabilitate a stump, right? And that's not going to happen in Gaza. Who's going to do 8 or 9? Who's going to do 8 or 9? Procedures, because the infrastructure is completely gone. Even people who've been blinded by shrapnel going into the eyes, because I think nearly almost everybody who's involved in an explosive situation gets an eye injury of some kind. Blindness is basically a death sentence, because navigating the world blind in this setting, where there's no infrastructure and there's bombs and missiles still going, so many hazards and obstacles, is a death sentence, especially for these children who've lost, like, it's a trickle-down effect, who've lost caregivers, right? And strangers are good. Palestinians are amongst the most generous, kind, loving people that I've ever met in Gaza. And so they take care of everybody. I mean, and they're taking care of, but everybody has limits because there's so much, right? The mental health, when I was there, there was an organization called HEAL that was helping with the mental health of these kids. There's one girl that I met, beautiful 11-year-old girl. She lost her entire family, so she's the only one. There's nobody left. 11 years old. She did not speak for about 5 months, 6 months, did not speak. That's just one example. And they worked on her. HEAL did. They worked with counselors. Mind you, I know at least personally of 3 mental health counselors in Gaza who've been killed in airstrikes. So even that's a shortage. But anyway, so they worked on her. Finally, she was able to speak. And then they used her as an 11-year-old to counsel other kids. So not use, that's a word bad. I mean, I didn't mean to use used. I mean, they were able to utilize her skill sets and what she'd learned as an 11-year-old to basically go and counsel other children who've been traumatized, right? And they did that to a number of kids. So, but the mental health trauma of these children is unimaginable, and that's a big issue that we're going to face in this genocide. And I mean, of course, infectious disease, skin diseases, and this is just a healthcare perspective I'm talking about, right? I mean, malnourishment that's going to affect the development of these children's brains and bodies is also prevalent. And that's going to have long-term ramifications of how these children will develop. And, everything I'm saying, I will say, is known to the Israelis. This is all done intentionally, and they've actually spoken about it, and by plan. Nothing is going by accident. It's all by plan. And you really feel that when you're on the ground. You say, this is like a maniacal plan, and it is a plan that's been really done to ethnically cleanse the population, right? And they know this. That's why this continual displacement from one zone to the other. So you have to evacuate, you go to the other zone, they start bombing that zone. They know that, unfortunately, because many of these children are injured, so are the adults, mind you, and they're sick and they're malnourished. In their migration from one evacuation zone to another, many will die. So you lose more, right? You'll lose more because they don't have any transport. They're walking on foot in shopping carts or being held or whatever. I mean, these kids, many are left behind because they can't move in hospitals and whatnot. And, and over 1,000 healthcare workers that we know of killed. So, I mean, it is very dire. There's really, I mean, the only good news here is the amazing resilience and innovation of the people in Gaza. It's what I say, it's next level. It's beyond imagination how resilient and how innovative these healthcare workers and these people are. Like, I think you have to really be there and it always breaks me down when I think of just how amazing they are with what they've been able to do. So I think that's the only good thing. And that's why I think they'll survive this. But in the meantime, it's for children, it's catastrophic. And I think that we have to, emphasize, how the fact that this is mostly, how people say it's a war on children. Well, when you're on the ground, you see this. It is a war. It is a genocide of children, because 50% of the population before the war was children of Gaza. And so I don't know right now. So what the scene is right now, I think up to May, when I went and before the Israeli occupation forces, invaded Rafah, destroyed Rafah, destroyed the Rafah crossing. And, we could get in, and I'll end off with this. We could get in, and the Egyptian government and the Israeli combined may not have made it easy for these 8 trucks to go in. But in all fairness, the Egyptian border at the Rafah, they did allow us to take a lot of things in. So I went in with 7 suitcases. Everybody else came in with 7 suitcases filled with different things, and we were able to get everything in. We all got in. Many of us doctors got in. But ever since the Rafah border was destroyed, we all enter through Jordan and then go down, and that's controlled by the Israelis. And they've been very strict. Doctors get rejected for no good reason. Obviously, anybody with an ounce of Palestinian origin is not allowed in at all. There's 20 doctors on a list, only 4 get accepted. These 4 show up at their border, 2 get turned back, or the whole mission gets turned back for no reason. It's just playing games. It's just making it difficult for us to get in. You're only allowed your personal items. Even a second cell phone is confiscated. And there's a shortage of cell phones in Gaza right now. And that's just the only way they communicate. eSIMs, we can, I send a lot of eSIMs to a lot of people. But yeah, so it's very, very difficult now. So the point being, and I'll end off with this because I'll offer questions, is that it's hard to get things in. So it's a big, big challenge that we're facing, that even if you're allowed to bring humanitarian aid in, especially in the north, that will make a big difference in stopping this profuse bleeding that's going on of children getting sick and then dying and just collapsing. And so I think it's not good, but I would tell everybody here, whoever's listening, that the resilience, innovation, hope, and strength of the Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank, everywhere, is what should inspire all of us to keep doing what we're doing, because we have to keep on. Eventually, we'll break through. But anyways, I'll stop there and I'll open for questions. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. We're going to go back to Lubna, and for people who have questions, we will take the questions at the end. Lubna?
Thank you very much. My apologies for that break. I can only put it down to it being a Zionist conspiracy. So I'm just going to share my slides again, and hopefully you'll be able to see them. Okay, so I had ended off at the point of speaking about how, over the sort of last 76, all manner of human rights violations. And as, the previous speaker was just speaking about all the sort of medical challenges that children of Gaza have experienced, that children have had in terms of losing their childhood. Children just simply grabbed, then arrested, taken into detention. Of children detainees is just absolutely shocking. And again, as mentioned earlier, they are rights that children have to be protected from this sort of behavior. But of course, it doesn't get applied in their case. This is another example of a young man who was, just imagine all of these soldiers around him. So I'm just sharing all of these images to give you a sense of what children have been enduring and just taken and grabbed off the street. I want to come to now the way in which children have been responding. Young children, teenagers, and we know, of course, of several examples. I want to mention Ahed Tamimi, who is very famously known for having slapped an Israeli soldier, and has, really become famous for her standing up to the Israeli occupation and military presence. There's also a young woman by the name of Jannah Jihad, who started covering what was happening around her from the age of 7, and was seen as being the youngest journalist in the world. So children who, again, should be playing are having to deal with things that are not, normal for children. They're basically having to face up to the military that they confront. They have to become journalists to cover what is happening around them. And of course, this is something that they are having to deal with. Another example is of brother and sister team who obviously are well known for their struggle that they took up to oppose the eviction that their family and other families were going through in Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem. And of course, their story is also well known. So just to continue, the one thing I wanted to speak to is the challenge that Palestinian parents have faced in terms of trying to protect their children. As we see in Gaza today, many parents and guardians, although they try to protect their children and minors as best as they can, they very often cannot. And this is an example of way back in 2000 of when Mohammed al-Dura was shot and killed despite his father trying to protect him. And this is an experience that parents are going through every single day today. They are trying to protect their children in Gaza from the bombs that are falling on top of them, and they struggle to do so. But this is a challenge that parents have had since the occupation began. But I wanted to move now to a situation which I think it's important for us to provide context that despite the fact that the children have had to deal with all of these abnormal situations. This little child on a bike near the apartheid wall, they have tried to find a way to survive, to try and continue playing and living in the situation that they find themselves in. This young man whose home was destroyed in the West Bank holding up a flag, this boy playing or riding his bicycle with his bird cage, trying to continue with normal life, or as normal as one can be amidst the ruins that you can see behind him. These children sitting, one smiling, and of course trying to survive. And these are the images that we see coming at us from our screens virtually every day. This is an image of young boys who are going to pray on Eid Day despite the ruins around them. This is from Gaza this year in June. And this is an image from earlier on after the genocide began of displacement, young boys carrying his mattress and trying to move from one part of Gaza to another as a child. The situation has become very dire, and there has been, of course, a lot of concern about the fact that many children have been left without parents. In this situation, you see children trying to take water to wherever they're staying. They have to go out and look for water. This is not something that children should have to do, to pull a trolley and try and find water, clean water, drinking water, wherever they can. There's, of course, a huge shortage of basics like food, healthcare, medicines, and so on. So this is what the children are having to deal with on a daily basis. This is quite a sad image of a young child holding bottles, obviously trying to find water or something to drink, and someone with a wheelchair behind the child. Obviously, these are just awful images that are there in the middle of a war zone. This is a situation which has become very common, of children basically starving and becoming malnourished. It really, saddens me to have to share these images, but this is the reality. Malnutrition has become a huge problem, and of course, it was happening even before the 7th of October from last year, where Israel was preventing food supplies from coming into Gaza Strip, and people were already suffering from malnutrition. Another image of a young boy who, and I've tried to not share images that are, really awful. This is really, sad in terms of how children have to be treated. The stretchers lying on the floor. And of course, most of the hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed. So these are the circumstances in which anyone who is injured or attacked has to basically receive treatment, and it's just absolutely tragic. And of course, children are paying the ultimate price, losing their life. This is image of Reem, who all of us came to know, 3-year-old Reem, who was killed together with her brother, 5-year-old Tariq. And of course, these images went around the world with the grandfather holding his granddaughter and calling her the soul of his soul. And this is something that, of course, just moved everybody around the world. So let me conclude. I've tried to speak to the experience of children over a longer period than just the genocide that's been happening in Gaza over the last year, to speak to what's been going on since virtually the beginning of the occupation. But again, what we see is the resilience of the children, the resilience of the people of Gaza. And it's just something that we have to take courage from. And of course, the saying, we teach life, so we teach life, absolutely holds true. So I want to conclude with that. And I think that as sad as the situation is, I think that we will actually see a free Palestine very soon because the tide is turning against Israel. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Lubna, for that insight. And once again, I remind you, if you would like to engage with the speakers, you can ask questions in the chat box. We hope to have an enriching discussion at the end. So now we'll go to our final speaker, Mr. Ayad Eqtaish. He is the Accountability Manager for Defense for Children International Palestine. This wonderful organization, DCIP, promotes and protects the human rights of Palestinian children. So this is really on-the-ground work. They do this by offering free legal aid, documenting violations of international law, and advocating for greater protections. Mr. Ayad has been an activist for the rights of Palestinians since over 25 years, and he is actually based in Ramallah, Palestine. Mr. Ayad.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you about the situation of Palestinian children, mainly in the West Bank, because other colleagues highlighted the situation of Palestinian children in Gaza. What's going on in the West Bank now? It's happening in the shadow of the genocide committed in Gaza. So the international community do not pay attention to the genocide committed against Palestinian children in the West Bank. My name is Ayad Eqtaish. I work for Defense for Children International, DCIP. DCIP is a child rights organization affiliated to international movement around the world. There are about 40 sections, and the relation between these sections is coordination relation. So each section develops its programs according to the particular need in each community. And the Palestinian section of Defense for Children International, basically the Palestinian children established 35 years ago, and the main purpose of the organization was to defend Palestinian children before the Israeli military courts, because this was during the first Intifada, where hundreds of Palestinian children were arrested and prosecuted in the military court system. So the main purpose at that time was to defend Palestinian children before these courts. But after 10 years of working in the military court system, we came to the conclusion that almost it's impossible to reach justice through the Israeli military legal system, because the system was designed not in order to maintain justice or to bring justice, but it was designed in order to suppress and control people who are living under the Israeli occupation. So after 10 years, in addition to defending Palestinian children before the Israeli military legal system, we started to document the violation to Palestinian children's rights. So we start documenting ill treatment and torture, the lack of fair trial guarantees, and the issue of arbitrary detention, because as a child right organization, we believe that arresting children in itself, it's not a violation to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but the violation is not just to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but to all human rights instruments, is ill-treating and torturing detainees, and the arbitrary detention and the lack of fair trial guarantees. Every year, we believe that the Israeli military legal system arrest and prosecute around 700 Palestinian children in the military legal system that lacks fair trial guarantees. The number of arrested children could be more than 700 children, but some of those children, after passing through ill treatment and torture and interrogation, they are released because the Israeli authorities can't find or can't obtain confessions from those children in order to sue them in the military legal system. So the only option is to release them because there is no evidence against them. And in the Israeli military legal system, the age of criminal responsibility is 12. So in some instances, the Israeli army may arrest children below the age of 12, but because they can't prosecute them in the Israeli military legal system, they release those children. But for a child who is less than 12 years old, it's a terrifying experience to be just arrested for a few hours. And this experience, he will not forget all his life. So, as an organization, after that, our role is to defend, document, and advocate for the rights of Palestinian children. We expanded further during the second Intifada in order to document child fatalities in the occupied Palestinian territories between the year, for example, between the year 2000 and October 2023. We were able to document the killing of 2,300 Palestinian children in the occupied Palestinian territories. The majority of those children were from Gaza Strip, especially during the military assault against Gaza. But after October 2023, in Gaza, we were unable to document all child fatalities because our field workers can't move freely in order to verify the hundreds of Palestinian children who are killed on a daily basis. But we depend on our numbers on the Ministry of Health in Gaza and on the media governmental office, and the recent numbers released by the governmental media office indicate that more than 16,500 children were killed as a result of the continuous genocide committed in Gaza. During the past year in the West Bank, we documented the killing of 85 Palestinian children. And this is a record number of child fatalities in the West Bank during just 1 year. The more than 1/5 of Palestinian children who were killed on the occupied West Bank between 2009 and now, they were killed during the past year. Today, I was asked to speak about child prisoners and their situation inside the Israeli military legal system. And I believe that the departure point to speak about the issue of child prisoners is discrimination through the existence of two legal systems that are operating in the same geographical jurisdiction at the same time. These two legal systems are the Israeli civilian system and the Israeli military legal system. The Israeli civilian system is applicable to Israeli settlers who are living illegally in the occupied Palestinian territories and for Israeli citizens in general, whereas the Israeli military legal system is designed to deal with Palestinian children who are living in the occupied Palestinian territories. And there are so much differences between the Israeli military legal system and the Israeli civilian system in favor of the Israeli civilian system, because the Israeli civilian system was designed to deal with Israeli children, while the Israeli military legal system was designed to deal with Palestinian children in the occupied West Bank. For children in East Jerusalem, after Israel annexed East Jerusalem, and Palestinians who are living there, they are classified as permanent residents. They are tried under the Israeli civilian system, where in fact they are treated like their counterparts from the West Bank. So Palestinian children from East Jerusalem, in theory, they have all the rights enshrined in the Israeli civilian system, while in practice, they are treated like Palestinian children from the West Bank. So what identify the type of the legal system and for every child is the nationality of the child, whether the child is an Israeli child or a Palestinian child. The Israeli military legal system based on ill treatment and torture. Just to go with you through the experience of Palestinian children who are arrested within the Israeli military legal system. As I mentioned, that every year around 700 Palestinian children are arrested and persecuted in the Israeli military legal system. Children usually are arrested during night hours, where the Israeli militaries invaded the area where children are living, surrounded their family home. In many cases, they force their way into the child family home. When they are there, they ask all family members to assemble in one place, sometimes inside the home, other times outside the home, regardless of the weather conditions. The Israeli army search the home of the child, and when they ask the family members to assemble in one place, they examine the IDs of all inhabitants and identify the child that they want to arrest. They do not usually inform the child or his parents about the reason for arresting the child or to where the child will be taken. In some cases, they may start beating or physically abusing the child in front of other family members. After that, they handcuff the child using plastic and tied usually to the back, and take the child to one of the military jeeps that are waiting outside. They put the child on the metal floor of the military jeep and transport him to one of the interrogation and detention centers, usually inside one of the Israeli settlements. During the way between the child family home and the interrogation center, the child exposed to different types of ill treatment and torture from the Israeli soldiers who are accompanying him. And the main purpose of this treatment is to prepare the child for the interrogation, to give confession to the allegation against the child. So Usually, children reach the interrogation center uh, exhausted, terrified, and sleep deprived. And the interrogation started with them. And the main purpose of the interrogation is to extract confessions from Palestinian children to be used by the military court as the primary evidence against them. During interrogation, children are not accompanied by any family member, and they are not allowed to consult with a lawyer. And they are not informed of their rights, like their right to be silent or any other right. So the main purpose of the interrogation is to extract confessions from the child in relation to the allegation against the child. Usually, children are interrogated either by the Israeli police or the Israeli security agency. And when children, usually they are interrogated by the Israeli security agency when there are the charges or the accusation against them is severe. And the Israeli security agency use different types of ill treatment and torture in addition to the physical pressure against Palestinian children. They use psychological pressure like threatening or intimidating children or placing children in solitary confinement, which is a cell that measure 1 by 2 meters without having any interaction with any human being except the jailer and the interrogator. And children may spend more than 1 month in solitary confinement without having any interaction with any body, and it's very difficult experience for children to be isolated from the outside and to not have communication with anybody. And the main purpose of placing children or practicing psychological violence against children in order to send a message to children that nobody can help you, nobody cares about you. The interrogator tried to send a message for Palestinian children under interrogation that I can do whatever I want. The only way in order to get out of this situation is to confess to the allegation against you. And the atmosphere created by the Israeli interrogator make the child to believe that the interrogator can do anything. For example, the child may be placed in solitary confinement for 3 or 4 days without even being invited for interrogation, and maybe after this period of time, the interrogator may pass by and discovered or pretend that by coincidence he discovered that the child is still there. So to send a message that this time we forget you for 4 days and next time we may forget you for more than this period. So these are the types of psychological pressure practiced against Palestinian children during interrogation. And I believe that the psychological pressure used against Palestinian children is more severe than the physical pressure because it aims to destroy the psychological well-being of Palestinian children who pass through this experience. At the end of this process, Palestinian children give confessions to the allegation against them. And here I'm not saying that all Palestinian children are whiter than driven snow. Some of them commit the offenses that they are accused of, while others do not. But regardless whether they commit these offenses or not, still they have rights, and these rights should be protected and respected. Among these rights, their right to be from ill treatment and torture, because ill treatment and torture is absolutely prohibited under all human rights instruments. And there is no situation can justify using ill treatment and torture against not just children, against adults. After that, children gave confessions to this allegation, and almost it's very difficult for the defense lawyer to argue that these confessions has been extracted by force, because there is no family member present during extracting these confessions. There is no lawyer accompanying the child during this process, and there is no audio-visual recording for these procedures. As I mentioned, that the types of ill treatment and torture depends more on the psychological pressure. So it's not easy for the defense lawyer to prove that these confessions has been extracted by force. And even if the defense lawyer tried to raise this issue before a military court judge, usually the response of the judge that this is not the right place to raise these issues. If you want to examine the evidence, you should call for another court which is responsible for examining these evidences. Usually, Palestinian children are kept in pre-trial detention, and as a result of this situation, defense lawyers tend to make like plea bargaining between the defense lawyer and the military prosecutor, where the defense lawyer and the child pleaded guilty to the allegation against the child in terms of getting reduced sentence, because it may take more time than the time that the child may spend inside a prison if they manage to reach a plea bargaining. At the end of this process, almost all Palestinian children who appear before the military court system, they are convicted, and the rate of conviction in the military court, it's more than 99%. So everybody who passed through this system will be convicted at the end of this process. So the military court system, it's like a production line. You put allegations and charges from this side and receive punishment from the other side. And usually the punishment against Palestinian children, it's threefolded. It's imprisonment punishment, suspended sentence punishment, and monetary fine against the child family. And usually Palestinian children receive all these punishments when they appear before the military court system. When children inside the prison, they do not they don't receive education. Before, they used to receive education in specific topics like Arabic, mathematics, and Hebrew language. And the type of education that they receive, it's not in line with their classes. So it's like one size fits for all. After the 7th of October, the situation inside Israeli prisons deteriorated dramatically. And now children inside Israeli prisons, they are disconnected from the outside world because there is no family visits. Lawyer visits is very restricted. And also the course sessions are taking place through a video link. So the child do not attend his course session in person, but he participated in his course session through a video link, and there is no means to know about what's going outside, like radio or television or newspaper, and children know about what's going outside through new arrested children. This is the situation of Palestinian children from the West Bank. The situation of children from Gaza, it's more difficult. Because, for example, at the end of September, there was 24 Palestinian children inside the prison affiliated by the Israeli prison service. Out of them, there was 10 classified as unlawful combatant, and this category is applicable to Palestinian children from Gaza Strip. But these 10 children do not reflect the number of Palestinian children from Gaza who are inside Israeli prison, because the majority of them, they are in detention center supervised by the Israeli army. And the problem that as a human rights organization, we do not know about the numbers of Palestinian children from Gaza inside Israeli prisons or detention centers. We don't know about their whereabouts. We don't know about their conditions. And whenever we try to ask about any child, almost we receive no information about his whereabouts. In relation to Palestinian children, during the last period, we noticed that there is spike in the number of Palestinian children placed under administrative detention orders, which is detention without charges, without court proceedings, based on secret evidence, and the administrative detention order issued by the military commander of the area. So out of the 242 Palestinian children, 85 of them were placed under administrative detention orders. It's more than, or it's about 35 of Palestinian children are placed under 35% of Palestinian children in Israeli prisons are placed under administrative detention orders. The main issue that we believe it's important, the psychological well-being of Palestinian children who pass through this experience. As a child right organization, we concentrate on providing legal services for Palestinian children, but through our experience, we believe that every child who passed through this experience will be psychologically affected, and the level of the psychological impact depends on the age of the child when he was arrested, the types of ill treatment and torture that he exposed to, and the period that the child spent inside Israeli prisons. But we believe that everybody will be affected as a result of passing through this experience. And now the situation is very harsh inside Israeli prisons in terms of the arrest conditions, the prison administration treatment of Palestinian children, and in relation to everything inside Israeli prisons, whether in relation to children or to adult. Now, children who spent a few months inside Israeli prisons, they may lose 10 or 15 kilos of their weight as a result of the lack of food provided for them by the Israeli prison service. We believe that the situation now is more difficult than any time before, despite the fact that before we believe that the situation of Palestinian children and how they are treated inside Israeli prison was very harsh. But now, after the 7th of October, the situation became harsher than before. And we believe that there is a need for the international community to intervene to put an end to the Israeli violation to Palestinian children's rights in general and for child prisoners in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayad, and thank you to all of our panelists for their really valuable insight into what is happening on the ground, both in Gaza and the West Bank, in terms of violations, atrocities committed against these children, and the types of treatment, ill treatment that they are getting by the Israeli forces. So now I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have. I will I will present some of the questions that I have to our panelists. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Before I lose more people, I'd like to also remind you to go to the link that has been posted and will be posted again now in the chat box to send a letter to your local MP in Canada demanding that they condemn Israel's treatment of children. So we'll start with Dr. Khan. Because of the most recent exposure that you've mentioned the idea that children could potentially be targeted. And so for most of us, we think of collateral damage, which is, the argument that is often used that these children happen to be there at the wrong time in the wrong place. But it seems that, based on what we heard, that you're saying there could be some targeted aims being taken at the children. How do you distinguish between targeted and collateral? Dr. Khan, are you with us? You're on mute if you are. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that question. Karen, in terms of raised hands, how are we going to deal with that? I have a few questions to go through first, but
I will leave that to you. I also know Dr. Khan had answered some questions in the chat that I believe people can see as well, but
okay.
I'll leave it with you, Ayman, to go ahead.
Okay. So Robert, we'll come to you in a few minutes. So now I have a few questions actually for Mr. Ayad as well that have been sent. So you mentioned about documenting children who are mistreated by Israel in the West Bank. Those who have been arrested in Gaza, whether through this war, I imagine only through this war. I don't know how they could have been arrested prior to the war. Maybe you can shed light on whether those children who are arrested in Gaza are documented by DCIP and you have access to assist them or not. You're still on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Would you please repeat the question because the internet was broken?
The children who are arrested in Gaza and they're transferred into Israel's security prisons and so on, are they documented by DCIP and are they able to receive the aid or the support that you normally would provide to children in the West Bank? Did you?
In relation to children from Gaza, almost the Israeli. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
In relation to children from Gaza, almost all human rights organizations do not have concrete information about their numbers, their conditions, their whereabouts. The Israeli authorities do not release any information about them. The only information that we know is the information related to 10 children incarcerated in prison under the supervision of the Israeli prison service. But the number of children from Gaza who were arrested and incarcerated by the Israeli army is more than this number, but we are not allowed to communicate with children from Gaza, even the 10 children who are inside prisons supervised by the Israeli prison service. They are not allowed to communicate with prisoners from the West Bank. So almost we do not have concrete information about the situation of Palestinian children arrested from Gaza Strip, but there were some children who were arrested for just few hours, and we succeeded in documenting their cases, and they inform us that they exposed to very harsh treatment. They were used as human shields. The Israeli army forced them to walk in front of the Israeli tanks, and they were taken to a specific place. And after a few days, they were released. Some of them were released to the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and others were sent to the southern part of Gaza Strip, despite the fact that they were arrested from the northern part of the Gaza. So we don't know exactly about the situation of Palestinian children from Gaza. In some cases, we managed to document some violation that they pass through, but all our documentation, I think that it doesn't reflect the situation experienced by Palestinian children from Gaza Strip and the type of ill treatment and torture that they pass through.
Thank you. And another question that I have for you is regarding DCIP's mission and the organization. Are you subjected to ill treatment as an organization by the Israeli government or Israeli agencies?
As a result of the work that DCIP is doing, the Israeli Minister of Defense classified DCIP in addition to 5 other organizations as terrorist organizations. So now we are outlawed by the Israeli government, and we believe that this was before October 2023 as a result of the work that. So during the past period, our offices were raided twice, and some of our equipment and files were confiscated. But now we are outlawed by the Israeli government. So at any given time, they may arrest the staff members, they may confiscate our assets, they may prevent us from traveling. So we don't know exactly what the Israeli government may do. And before designating the organization as terrorist organization, there was a discrediting campaign by Gungo organization to discredit the work of DCI and to try to connect it to terrorist organization. Almost Israeli civil society organization approached all our donors in order to make the allegation that DCI is a terrorist organization, and this allegation, despite the fact that these allegations are baseless, but it takes a lot of your effort in order to refute these allegations and to contact people who approach you in order to answer their questions. So we were under these discrediting campaigns for more than 10 years, but at some point the Israeli government discovered that discrediting the organization through civil society, Israeli civil society organization, didn't achieve the goal to paralyze and to defund and to discredit the organization. So in the year 2021, the official Israeli government jumped in and declared the organization as terrorist organization.
really unfortunate given the critical role that you play. In 30 seconds, I'll just give you the last question that was just posted. But in 30 seconds, maybe for the answer, if you could comment on whether specific stories of injustice against the children could be propagated in our social media platforms. Are you able to, whether through your organization or through certain platforms, offer the individual like us information on certain cases? I can imagine maybe there's confidentiality issues, but people are asking, we want to be able to lobby, we want to be able to promote these injustices on social media.
I think that the case of every child is unique in itself because children who are exposed to the Israeli violations, they have their own stories, their dreams and ambitions, and all these are cut off as a result of the Israeli violation. It's not just related to children who are arrested by the Israeli military, it's related to children who are injured or killed by the Israeli authorities or used as human shields. For example, during the past 2 years or so, DCI documented the cases of 8 Palestinian children who were used as human shields by the Israeli military during military invasion to Palestinian communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayad. Very insightful answers. Dr. Khan, we had one question in regards to a observation that you made. Are you with us first, just to confirm?
I am.
Good. So you made the observation that potentially children are targeted. For most of us, we take this as, we take what's happening oftentimes as these children were there at the wrong time, the wrong place, and it's just collateral damage. And yes, the loss is significant, but that they were not specifically targeted. But it seems like you're suggesting that that is the case. And how do you distinguish them?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, as if you look back, multiple UN agencies and human rights groups, including Amnesty, and have documented this from a long ago, including the March of Return. I believe it was in 2018. There's corroborated, confirmed reports of Israeli snipers targeting children and women and men at the kneecaps, for either death or even headshot wounds, but at the kneecaps, at the elbow, to really disable people. So there's been lots of reports of that. So this is something that's nothing new, and definitely has lots of precedent. But having said that, I mean, myself and a number of doctors, especially in April, the doctors that went in March and April have documented direct hits to the head, not by accident, by sniper fire, to the kneecaps. Many kids came in with bullets in their head. And it wasn't by accident. It wasn't like a shrapnel. It wasn't like an errant bullet or something like that, with a pattern type of injury described by these trauma surgeons. I mean, I myself had one case that after, at first you don't believe this, although this particular defense force, occupation force, is capable of anything. I don't see any red lines for them. And certainly this genocide has shown no red lines, in my opinion. But having said that, at first I wasn't sure, but I mean, I definitely saw a wound to the eye that could have been gunshot. And then in March and April, when I spoke to trauma surgeons who deal with general trauma, they corroborate that. I mean, as of recent, I mean, the guys coming back from Gaza now have all documented that on a daily basis, they saw specific gunshot wounds on children. Okay, now these are also, many of them are elementary school age children who are not a threat whatsoever. Why would you want to fire a bullet that's a direct hit to the head, if you're not aiming for that? And these are the most accurate snipers in the world. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of evidence. I mean, Gaza is just a reflection of what has been happening to the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza for decades, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And since we're at the last minute, I would like to offer Lubna the chance to comment on anything she's heard, or just offer any concluding remarks. And I apologize, I couldn't take everyone's questions.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'd just like to say that I think that political solidarity is absolutely critical at this stage. It's important that we all come together, especially, I mean, the children are the most vulnerable on the ground in Gaza. And we all have to actually write as many letters as we can and engage in all forms of solidarity. The experiences that have been shared by our medical comrades on this webinar, really give us a clear picture of what is being done to the children physically, and it's horrible. And of course, their psychological situation, mental condition is something that is, really something to worry about. But we have to ensure that politically, because this is where we are now, we have to ensure that that is the pressure that we have to put. And I can't say these words enough. BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. That is what brought down apartheid in South Africa. That is what is going to bring down apartheid Israel. So I'd like to end on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nadvi, and I'd like to thank all the speakers and all of you, our audience, for being here today. As a reminder, tomorrow there's a webinar on resistance until return, addressing the root causes within a rights-based decolonization approach. Be sure to attend that. The link is in the chat box. And be sure to check out the links. We'll be sending this entire session recorded with all the links that have been posted, including links to DCIP, the BDS Coalition, Just Peace, Advocates, and others. And with that, I'd like to thank you all, and I'll ask Karen if there's any final things that I might have forgotten.
That is great. Thank you. We're all good, and thank you so much to Ivan for moderating, and to the three panelists, and to everyone who was able to join us. And do share the recording, and do reach out to civil society and to our elected officials to keep them accountable. Thanks, everyone, and